This story is called My Cousin Wrongfully Accused Me of Abuse. So my parents kicked me out, took my college fund, and gave it to her. But now the truth has come out and they want to reconcile. Hey everyone, before we dive into today's video, I could really use your help. We've noticed a drop in the channel's growth, and subscribing is one of the quickest, easiest ways you can support us. It's free, and it helps us keep delivering amazing content to you. Your support means everything to us. Let's work together to keep this channel growing. Thanks so much. Now, let's jump into the video. I've been holding on to this story for way too long, and I really need to vent. Just a heads up, this will be a long one, and honestly, typing this out still feels strange. But here it goes. For some background, I'm a 24-year-old guy, and up until about 2 years ago, I had what most people would consider a pretty good life. Nothing too extraordinary, but comfortable. My parents ran a small local business, a supply chain thing, but I won't get too specific. We weren't wealthy, but they made enough that I never had to worry about basic needs like some of my friends did. Just a quick note before I go on. This is my main account, but I'm using fake names for obvious reasons. I don't want any more drama than what I've already been through. I grew up in a medium-sized city in the Midwest. Being vague on purpose, sorry. We lived in a typical suburban neighborhood where everyone knew each other. Our house wasn't anything special, just a standard 4-bedroom place with a decent backyard where I spent time playing video games with my friends after school. My parents, let's call them Dan and Amy, were pretty cool. They worked hard but always made time for family. Dan would help me with my math homework even after long 12-hour workdays, and Amy somehow managed to attend all my school events while running their business. Looking back, I took all that stability for granted. But the person I want to talk about in this story is my cousin. Let's call her M. She's my age, literally born 3 months apart, and we practically grew up together after her dad, my Uncle Jake, died in a car accident when we were about 8. Her mom, Kate, kind of checked out after that, trying to find herself or whatever, which mostly meant leaving M with us while she traveled through Europe with her yoga friends. Thinking about how M and I used to be makes this whole situation even more messed up. We were like siblings. She'd come over almost every day after school, and we'd do homework together, play Pokemon on our DS. Yes, I know I'm dating myself here. And just hang out. Back then, M was really cool. She'd cover for me when I snuck out to meet friends, and I'd help her through all the drama when Kate would show up for a week pretending to be mom, only to disappear again. My parents basically became M's second parents. They'd buy her school supplies, take her on family vacations, and even got her braces when Kate forgot to send money. M had her own room at our house, and Dan and Amy never complained about the extra costs. They treated her like their own daughter. I remember one time in middle school when M had a leading role in the school play. She practiced for weeks, and Kate promised she'd fly in to see it. But of course, she didn't show. M tried so hard not to cry backstage, but I could tell she was about to break down. My mom dropped everything at work, rushed to the school, and sat in the front row, recording the whole thing on her iPad. That's the kind of thing that makes this whole situation even crazier to me. We were real family, not the kind of see-you-at-Christmas cousins, but actual family. M knew all my embarrassing stories, and I knew hers. We had these inside jokes that drove everyone else crazy. But I wasn't some perfect kid. Sure, my parents had money saved for college, but I worked summer jobs at a local game store just because I enjoyed it. I played a lot of video games, probably too much, if you ask my mom. I was decent at school, but I wasn't a straight-A student or anything. Just a regular guy, really. M, on the other hand, was incredibly smart back then, like top of our class smart. She had this amazing ability to remember everything she read. Teachers loved her, and everyone thought she'd end up at some prestigious college. It's so weird writing this down. I haven't thought about the good times in forever. I've been trying to forget it all, to be honest. Funny how things change, right? The shift started during junior year of high school when Em was still living with us most of the time. Her mom, Kate, was off doing whatever with her third or maybe fourth husband. Honestly, I lost count. But something was different. The first thing I noticed was how Em started acting really strange on social media. She'd spend hours taking hundreds of selfies just to post one, then obsessively check how many likes she got compared to the other girls at school. I remember one time she cried because some random influencer's post got more engagement than hers. I tried to tell her it wasn't a big deal, but she snapped at me, saying I wouldn't understand. Then she started hanging out with this new group of girls, those girls who were always showing off their designer stuff and whose parents drove fancy cars. Em started complaining that our house was basic, the same house she practically grew up in, and how embarrassing it was that my mom shopped at Target. Even stranger, Em started making up wild stories about her mom, saying Kate was a successful businesswoman traveling the world, when in reality, she was just hopping between yoga retreats and burning through the remains of Uncle Jake's life insurance money. My parents never corrected her because they didn't want to embarrass her, but it was cringeworthy to watch her lie like that. The money situation got intense. Em would borrow my mom's clothes and accessories and never return them, then ask for expensive stuff for her birthday and Christmas. When she didn't get exactly what she wanted, she'd throw huge tantrums. One time, she stopped talking to my parents because they got her a regular iPhone instead of the Pro Max version. Who does that? But the thing that really started freaking me out was her obsession with AI art. At first, it seemed harmless. She used these apps to edit her photos, making them look more aesthetic. But then she started getting into deep fake videos and AI-generated images, spending hours in her room messing around with them. I remember walking past one night and hearing her laugh, talking on Discord with her new friends, joking about how they could ruin someone's life with this technology. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but I wish I had seen it for what it was. Typical edgy teen stuff. The truly disturbing part was how she started using people's photos without asking. She'd take pictures from family events or parties, run them through these AI programs, and make weird edits. Some were even pretty disturbing. My mom found some of these on her laptop once and tried to talk to her about it, but Em just said she was practicing her art and that we didn't understand digital culture. Around this time, she also started positioning herself in family photos, so she looked like the main character and would throw a fit if she wasn't in the center. Then she'd post these heavily edited versions where everyone else was blurred or cropped out, but she looked perfect. My dad joked about it once, asking if we were just NPCs in her game. She didn't talk to him for 3 days after that. Even creepier, she started taking pictures of me when I wasn't looking, like I'd be doing homework or playing games, and I'd catch her sneaking photos. When I asked her about it, she'd always have an excuse. Oh, I'm making a family photo album. Or, it's for a school project. But she never showed me any album or project. I tried talking to my parents about how weird she was getting, but they just chalked it up to teenage girl stuff and said she was probably just struggling because of her mom being absent. They kept making excuses for her, saying they felt bad about her dad dying and her mom being useless. Then things took a turn during senior year when everyone was talking about their college plans. I was pretty excited because my parents had been saving up for my college fund since I was born. Not like a massive trust fund, but enough to go to a decent school without accumulating a mountain of debt. They were always open about it, showing me the account statements to help me understand how saving worked. Here's where I messed up. One night, Em and I were hanging out in the basement, playing Smash Bros like we used to when we were kids. She seemed more relaxed than she had been in months, so when she asked about my college plans, I didn't think twice. I told her my parents had saved about $80,000 for college. Even typing that amount now makes me cringe. Em went quiet, which should have been my first warning sign. Then she started asking a lot of specific questions about the account, where it was held, if it was in my name, when I'd get access to it, etc. I remember exactly what she said next. Must be nice having parents who actually plan for your future, instead of blowing all your dad's life insurance money on yoga retreats in Bali. I tried to sympathize with her, telling her she could apply for scholarships or look for part-time jobs. I even offered to help her start saving, but she just gave me this strange look, like she was looking right through me. Then she started ranting about how unfair everything was, how her mom had promised to help with college but blew all the money on her new husband's business ventures. Spoiler, they were all scams. How my parents treated her like family, but never thought to save any money for her. And how I didn't deserve the fund because I wasn't even that smart, and only got good grades because teachers felt sorry for me, helping my poor orphan cousin. Her words, not mine. I got pretty upset at that point and told her she was being ungrateful, considering how my parents had raised her for free. Big mistake. Huge mistake. She stormed out, and I figured she just needed some space. I went back to gaming and texted my girlfriend Sarah about hanging out later. Sarah was supposed to be a big part of my future. She and I had been dating since sophomore year and planned to go to the same college. The next morning, Em wasn't at breakfast, which was odd because she always joined us. My mom said she'd left early to work on a school project, but looking back, she was probably already putting her plan in motion. That day at school felt off. People were giving me weird looks and whispering when I passed by. Sarah wasn't answering my texts. I figured it was some silly high school rumor, but this was worse than anything I'd ever imagined. When I got home that evening, I had no idea what was about to unfold. I walked in to find everyone in the living room, and I mean everyone. My parents, Em, her mom Kate, who I hadn't seen in months, and even Sarah's parents. Em was crying on the couch, with Kate holding her, though considering Kate hadn't cared about Em in years, this was rich. The moment I walked in, the room went dead silent. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and you can just tell everyone was talking about you? Multiply that by 1,000. I asked, "What's going on?" like an idiot in a horror movie, and Em started crying even harder. Looking back, her acting skills were pretty impressive, not going to lie. My mom wouldn't even look at me, and my dad just sat there with his head in his hands. Then Kate pulled out her iPad, and it was clear she had this whole presentation prepared. I kid you not, she started showing everyone these Discord servers I was supposedly part of, where people were trading AI-generated images. She had screenshots of conversations that appeared to be from my accounts, discussing using Em's photos. She even had fake bank statements showing transfers from crypto wallets that were supposedly mine. The worst part was how convincing it looked, scarily realistic. Em had spent months learning how to use these AI tools and knew exactly how to make everything appear legitimate. She even added little details like inside jokes we used to share, making the fake conversations sound just like how I actually talk. "What did you do?" my dad asked. I tried to explain that none of it was true, that I didn't even know how to use most of this technology, but Em had thought of everything. She said I was pretending to be bad with tech so no one would suspect me. She even used my love for gaming against me, claiming I learned all of this from dark web gaming forums. Sarah was there too. She hadn't replied to my texts all day because she had been with Em, who was finally opening up about her trauma. Sarah couldn't even look at me. She just kept holding Em's hand and glaring at me like I was some kind of monster. What really hurt wasn't just that Sarah believed Em, but how quickly she discarded me. There was no hesitation, no doubt, it was instant. She didn't ask for proof, didn't question how absurd the situation was, or even consider that maybe, just maybe, the guy she had been with for years wasn't some hidden monster. It felt like she wanted to believe the worst about me, like it was easier for her to rewrite our history than to face the fact that she was being manipulated. And the worst part was that she didn't just believe it. She helped M. She amplified the lies, made sure our friends heard them, and turned every mutual connection against me. In her eyes, I wasn't just guilty. I was someone who had to be erased completely. What was truly messed up was how M used our entire history against me. All those years growing up together, all the time we spent in each other's rooms, all the family vacations. We were close, and yet M twisted everything into something dark. She made it seem like I'd been planning this for years. I kept trying to defend myself, but every word I said made things worse. When I brought up how M was the one always taking secret photos of me, she started crying harder and claimed I was darving her. I had to Google that later. Apparently it means deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. My dad finally looked at me, his expression cold. How long has this been going on? I lost it. Are you serious? You're actually believing this? You're all crazy for buying into this nonsense. M is lying. She's just jealous about college. She wants my college fund. That was a big mistake. M let out this exaggerated sigh, shaking her head like she was pitying me. I knew he'd say that. That's exactly why I told you guys he'd bring up college to distract from what he's done. Kate exploded. We're way past that. You realize they can press charges for this, right? I wasn't even listening anymore. My mom just sat there, silent, tears rolling down her face, refusing to look at me. I turned to her, desperate. Mom, you know me. Please, you know me. But before she could respond, M gasped, her whole body shaking. No, no, don't let him near me, she cried, stumbling backward, clutching her chest like she couldn't breathe. Then she collapsed on the floor, hyperventilating. Honestly, it was an Oscar-worthy performance. That was it for my dad. He grabbed me by the shoulders and shoved me toward the door, his voice like thunder. Get out! I froze. Dad, you are not my son, he spat. I'll have your things packed and sent somewhere, but you're not welcome in this house anymore. Just like that, it was over. I tried one last time to tell them M was lying. Want to know what my mom finally said to me? I wish I'd never had you. I walked out with only my backpack, phone, and wallet. No jacket, it was March in the Midwest. Sarah blocked my number, and I spent that night in my car, parked in a Walmart lot. That first night was probably the longest of my life. It was around 30 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and I only had my thin hoodie. I kept trying to text people, but everyone had blocked me. M had done her work well. She'd even reached out to my online gaming friends. My Discord was blowing up with people calling me a creep before I logged off completely. The few people who hadn't blocked me yet were sending screenshots of M's posts about me. She was playing the victim perfectly, claiming she was finally free to speak her truth, and hoped others would come forward with their AI abuse stories. She even started a hashtag about AI safety that was gaining traction at our school. The next morning, I tried to go to my part-time job at GameStop. My manager took one look at me and said they'd heard about what happened and couldn't have someone like me working with young customers. I got fired on the spot. I was down to about $167 in my checking account, and all my savings were locked in that college fund I no longer had access to. My credit card? It had been reported lost and canceled. They really thought of everything. I spent the next few days rotating between my car, the public library for warmth and Wi-Fi, and a 24-hour McDonald's where a night shift worker would let me stay if I bought a coffee every few hours. Shout out to Marcus. If you're reading this, bro, you probably saved my life. Those nights, I was getting desperate enough to consider some really dark options when my phone rang. It was my Aunt Paula, my mom's sister, who lived about 4 hours away in a tiny town. She was the only one who bothered to ask for my side of the story. I sat in the McDonald's parking lot and told her everything about M's jealousy, the AI photos, and how she set me up. You know what? She actually listened, really listened. She didn't just wait for me to finish so she could tell me how disappointed she was. When I finished, she was quiet for a minute, then said something I'll never forget. "I believe you." I lost it then, started crying right there in the parking lot. I hadn't cried through all of this until that moment, but those 3 words broke me. Paula told me to stay put. She was coming to get me after finishing her shift at the hospital. She's a nurse, but she'd drive right after. She asked if I could hold on for 12 more hours. It felt like the longest 12 hours of my life, and I kept having paranoid thoughts that M might somehow stop her from coming. At around 2 a.m., Paula's old Subaru pulled into the parking lot. She took one look at me, unshowered for days, wearing the same clothes, and just hugged me. She didn't ask any questions or judge me. She hugged me, then handed me a warm jacket, some food, and a pillow for the ride. We stopped at an ATM where she took out some cash for me. Later, I found out she had to dip into her own savings for that. The whole drive back, she let me sleep while playing old 90s music really quietly. When we got to Paula's house, M had somehow found out I was leaving town and posted this whole thing claiming it proved my guilt. She even got Sarah to post about how glad she was that the truth came out. Paula took my phone and locked it in a drawer, saying I needed to focus on surviving and that social media could wait. She set me up in her spare room. Nothing fancy, just a twin bed and a desk. But it felt like a palace after sleeping in my car. What's really messed up is that M had been to Paula's house before on family trips. She knew exactly where I was going. But I guess her revenge fantasy didn't account for the part where her victim actually had to survive afterward. Those first few months at Paula's were tough. Really tough. I basically became a hermit, spending most days staring at the ceiling in that spare room, trying to process how quickly my life had fallen apart. Paula would bring me food, but I barely ate. I lost about 20 pounds in the first month. The worst part, the nightmares. I grew up with social media. Everyone my age did. But now, every time I saw a phone camera, I'd have a panic attack. I kept thinking everyone was recording me, that M was somehow watching. Paula had to put a piece of tape over her laptop's camera because I was convinced M could hack it. Paula was literally an angel through all this. She worked night shifts at the hospital, but still made sure to check on me during the day, even bringing home random books from the library. Looking back, I think she was trying to show me I could still have a future. About 2 months in, Paula sat me down for a real talk. She said I could stay with her as long as I needed, but I had to start doing something with my life. I couldn't just hide in her spare room forever. She was right, but the idea of facing the world again was terrifying. The next day, she brought home a flyer for the local community college. They had night classes. The classes were in IT and computer science. Ironic, right? The same technology M had used to ruin my life could now help me rebuild it. Paula offered to assist with the tuition, and I found out later she took out a small loan for it. I still feel guilty about that. Here's where things get kind of boring, but the good kind of boring. I started taking basic IT courses, and it turned out I was actually pretty good at it. The teachers had no idea about my past and didn't look at me like I was a monster. It felt great to just be treated like a normal person again. I even got a job at a local computer repair shop. The owner, Mike, was an old guy who didn't care about social media or drama. He just wanted to know if you could fix computers. The pay wasn't great, but it was something. Plus, I was learning valuable skills. I started creating a routine. Work at the shop during the day, classes at night. Paula would leave dinner in the microwave for me when she worked night shifts, and sometimes we'd cross paths at breakfast, me just getting home from classes and her just getting up for work. We'd share coffee and she'd do her crossword while I studied. The panic attacks started happening less often, and I was able to go to the grocery store without feeling like everyone was staring at me. I even made a few acquaintances at school. Nothing like friends, but people I could work with on group projects without freaking out. Later, I found out that M was still posting about me. She had created this whole narrative that I had escaped justice and was probably continuing my crimes elsewhere. But you know what? Her posts started getting less attention. People were moving on to newer drama. I knew this because, for the first time in months, I let myself take a peek. Not directly, no way I was giving her that satisfaction, but through an old classmate's public Twitter thread where people were calling her out for being a clout chaser. Someone had linked to one of her dramatic Survivor posts, and the replies were brutal. "Wait, wasn't this debunked already?" one person commented. Another said, "Girl, if you need money, just say that." And then I saw one that made my blood run cold. A random account asked, "Didn't her family give her like a ton of money for college? What happened to that?" I clicked on the thread. Big mistake. Buried in the replies was a screenshot of M's old post, the one from right after everything went down. It was a long, rambling caption about how she was finally getting the support she deserved, along with a picture of her acceptance letter to some prestigious university. Someone else chimed in. Wasn't her cousin supposed to go to college too? What happened to his fund? I sat there, staring at the words, my stomach sinking, because I already knew what had happened. I just never wanted to admit it to myself. The day I was kicked out, my dad had said, "You are not my son." I guess he meant it because instead of saving my college fund for me, hell, even just leaving it in the account, they gave it all to her, $80,000. She took my future and burned it for what? Clout, designer handbags, a fake influencer career. I don't know how long I sat there, but Paula must have seen my face because she gently took my phone from my hands. "You don't need to do this to yourself," she said. But it was too late. The damage had already been done. Paula helped me set up a new email, new phone number, and everything. Not to hide, just to start fresh. The only connection to my old life was a burner email I checked occasionally, just in case anyone from my past ever wanted to hear my side of the story. No one ever did. The weird thing is, I started getting kind of okay. Not happy, exactly, but stable. I started learning about how AI really works in my classes, digital forensics, how to spot fake images, all that stuff. Too late to help me, but it felt good to understand. About a year in, I had a moment. I was sitting with Paula watching some silly cooking show, both of us exhausted from work and school, eating takeout pizza. And I realized this was my life now. Small, quiet, boring, but mine. No drama, no social media fame, just existing. But then my parents started trying to contact me. It started with emails, lots of emails, all with subject lines like, "Please read this," "We need to talk," and "We made a terrible mistake." I ignored them all. Paula saw them too. We shared Netflix, and sometimes I'd forget to log out of my email on her tablet. Then they started calling Paula, constantly. She didn't tell me at first, not wanting to mess with my head when I was finally doing okay. But one night after her shift, she sat me down with a serious look on her face. Turns out M had messed up, big time. Remember that college fund my parents gave her? She blew through it in less than a year. But that wasn't even the crazy part. M dropped out of college after one semester. She told my parents she was taking online classes while actually using their money to try becoming an influencer, buying followers, paying for shoutouts, the whole wannabe famous package. But even that wasn't enough for her. She started pulling the same stunt she did with me, but this time she targeted my dad. She created a fake story about how he had been inappropriate with her, complete with AI-generated evidence. She said he was using the college money to buy her silence. The messed up part? She was sloppy this time. She got too confident. She started showing the AI-generated evidence to people who actually knew about the technology. Someone pointed out the telltale signs of AI manipulation, those little glitches that programs leave behind. But Em didn't stop there. When my dad cut her off, she went nuclear, posting everything online to try to get him cancelled. She even tried to get my mom involved, saying she knew about everything. Here's where karma showed up. Em didn't realize that in the 2 years since she did this to me, AI detection technology had gotten a lot better. Some IT guy my dad hired took one look at her evidence and spotted all the signs of AI manipulation. The whole house of cards started falling apart. People started questioning her story and looking back at what she did to me. Someone even found old cached versions of her social media posts where she had messed up and posted the unedited versions of some photos. My parents were devastated, not just because of what Em had done to them, but because they realized what they'd done to me. They found out I was living with Paula. Em had been telling everyone I fled the country and was trying to contact me. Paula showed me all their messages. They were a mess. My mom was having panic attacks. My dad couldn't sleep. They wanted to make things right. They said they'd do anything to fix what they'd done. Well, honestly, part of me was happy they were suffering. How messed up is that? My own parents, and I was glad they were getting a taste of what I went through. But mostly I felt nothing. Reading their desperate messages didn't even make me angry anymore. They were basically strangers to me now. Paula thought I should talk to them, said it might help me move on. But I didn't want to move on. I'd built this new life for myself. Without them, without all that drama. Why should I let them mess it up? Then Em showed up at my parents' house, crying, saying she needed help. She apologized for getting carried away and promised to make things right. My parents actually started believing her again. Can you believe that? That's when I decided to go back. Not for them, not for closure, but because I was done letting Em ruin people's lives with her lies. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. Thought I was crazy, but Paula helped me plan everything. I'd learned enough about technology by then to know exactly what I was doing. The first thing I did was buy one of those tiny hidden cameras, just a basic one that could record audio and video. Paula helped me test it to make sure it wasn't obvious. I also set up my phone to record backup audio, just in case. I found out from Paula that Em was staying at my parents' house again, playing the whole repentant cousin act. She was still posting about her journey of healing, but now mixing in vague posts about my dad. Classic Em, keeping all her options open. I showed up on a Tuesday afternoon, picked that time because I knew my parents would be at work. I didn't want them involved yet. Em opened the door, and man, it was weird seeing her in person after everything. She'd changed her hair, was wearing expensive clothes, probably bought with my college fund. But that manipulative look in her eyes was exactly the same. She tried to act shocked, doing her trembling victim routine, but I just stood there, calm as could be. 2 years of therapy really coming in clutch. I told her I just wanted to talk, nothing else, no accusations, no yelling, just talk. She tried to say she was going to call the police, but I think something about how calm I was freaked her out. She let me in. We sat in the kitchen, the same kitchen where we used to do homework together as kids, and I just let her talk, letting her dig her own grave. I asked her simple questions and watched her story unravel. The best part? She actually admitted everything. Not because she felt guilty, but because she was proud of it. She straight up told me she did it because she could, because it was too easy. She bragged about how she had learned all about AI tools from some Discord servers and spent months planning everything. Then she started talking about how she was going to do the same thing to my dad, how no one could prove anything, that it was her word against his, and everyone always believes the victim. That's when I took out my phone and played back the last 30 seconds of our conversation. You guys, I wish I could have taken a picture of her face in that moment. She went from smug to terrified in less than half a second. She tried to grab my phone, but I'd already backed everything up to the cloud. Learned that trick in my IT classes. She started crying, real, ugly crying, begging me not to show anyone the recording. She even offered to tell everyone she made everything up about me. She offered to split what was left of the college fund. Of course, there was nothing left. I didn't say a word, just texted my parents to come home. They showed up 20 minutes later and found us sitting there, me calm, and M having a complete meltdown. I played the entire recording for them, everything. M admitting she fabricated the original accusations, her bragging about the AI photos, her plans to do the same thing to my dad. Everything. My mom ran to the bathroom and threw up. My dad just sat there, looking like his whole world was collapsing, which I guess it was. M tried one last time to manipulate the situation, saying she only did it because she was traumatized by her dad's death and her mom abandoning her. She said she needed help, not punishment. She pulled the "we're family" card. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "We're not family. We never were." Then I sent the recording to everyone, her mom, my extended family, her friends, and even those who had blocked me 2 years ago. I also sent it to the college she had dropped out of, explaining how she had scammed my parents out of the tuition money. The fallout was pretty much what you'd expect. M's mom finally showed up, but only to cut her off. My parents tried to press charges, but there wasn't much legal ground since M hadn't technically blackmailed them for money. She just manipulated them into handing it over. My parents begged for forgiveness, literally begged. But you know what? I couldn't give it to them. Maybe that makes me a bad person, but I just couldn't. I told them I didn't hate them anymore, but I didn't want them in my life either. Last I heard, M's living with some random roommates and working retail. She tried to restart her social media, but no one wants anything to do with her now. Turns out people don't like finding out they were manipulated. I went back to Paula's house, back to my quiet life, my IT classes, and my small group of new friends who don't know or care about my past. Sometimes I still have nightmares about cameras and AI, but they're happening less often. Paula says I should be proud of how I handled everything, that I got justice without becoming like M. I don't know about that. Some days I'm not sure if exposing her made me better or worse than her. But you know what? I'm free. Really free. M can't hurt me anymore. Can't hurt anyone else either. And that's enough. Edit. Holy crap, this blew up. Rip my inbox. Edit 2. Thanks for all the awards, but please save your money. Donate to organizations that help victims of cyber harassment instead. Edit 3. Oh yeah, almost forgot. Sarah reached out after the recording went viral. She sent me this long, emotional message apologizing for not believing me, saying she thinks about me every day, yada yada. She said she's single now and wants to reconnect and make things right. I left her on red. If she's single, that's cool, but I'm already taken by a drop-dead gorgeous lady that even Paula approves of. Life is lit. To anyone going through something similar, it gets better. Maybe not perfect, but better. Trust me on that.